of social ownership, right? So what this all means is that he wants everybody to pretty much have the same amount of stuff, and no one should be above anybody else. And he's saying this all while wearing $90,000 worth of jewelry, lowball estimate, and while also saying, eat the rich. Yeah, equity. Sorry, equal equity. Absolutely. Now let's continue here.
More to I'm sorry, there's no other.
No, it's fine.
I can call him up and send another chair
No,
up
it's
here.
good. I'm practicing being like crunched up.
Well, hold up. Did Hassan flex again? Did he flex his wealth again?
So he was a more honorable content creator than you.
Yeah, for sure.
He provided more to the.
I'm sorry, there's no other.
No, it's fine.
I can call him up and send another chair
No,
up
it's
here.
good. I'm practicing being like.
Hassan was going to order one of his slaves to bring him another chair. What a kind man. This is great.
Crunched up.
He is the rich that we're supposed to be eating? Yeah, absolutely.
Hiding.
It is a nice frame, you know.
Yeah.
Cinematography wise, we have a little empty space up here.
I'm really small.
Yeah.
And you guys are really big.
We are huge, dude.
But
we're fucking jacked.
But I saw this guy, and he's like definitely in his like 40s, maybe late 40s, and he's like surrounded by these like 20-year-olds, and I was like, if I'm ever
complaining about it. Never stop complaining about the Epstein thing. Oh, here we go. We got Tucker Carlson talking about it too. Let's look at this.
The people don't matter in this case.
Man, I think this, for a bunch of reasons, it's so obvious. It is salacious. People have followed it for years. The president promised to reveal the truth about.
You know something else? Ever since this whole thing started getting to be a big deal, I've been seeing a lot more lizards lately. Like, every time I go outside, there's like 2 or 3 lizards. Me too? Huh. That's crazy. Where are all them? Where do they all come from? I don't know.
This.
It's just crazy.
And Bondi, as you said, went on television, so we have the truth. We're going to give it to you.
Yes.
I think this is I think this is a big deal. It's a really big deal. It's bigger. I hope so too, actually. So let's just assess this logically.
Very big deal.
They're covering up. The DOJ, the current DOJ under Pam Bondi is covering up crimes.
I think somebody's getting covered for. I think I do. I think that there is a 0% chance that nobody is that there's actually no leads. No fucking way, man.
Very serious crimes by their own description. Why are they doing that?
It's Trump? No. If it was Trump, Biden, dude, they gave that guy 34 fucking felonies. They arrested him. They gave him a mugshot. They did everything. If they could have gone after Trump, it would have been, they had 4 fucking years to do that. It could be Trump also, but it's a lot of
really only 2 potential explanations that I can think of. Maybe you've got another. The first is that Trump is involved. That Trump is on the list. That they've got tape of Trump doing something awful.
Yeah.
I don't believe that for 2 reasons. One, I've talked to Trump about it a lot.
So Trump said he wasn't on the list.
The sad part is, I think that my heart is going to carry a level of weight that will continue to weigh me down as we have to continue to do our best to survive an administration that literally is against us. An administration that is doing everything, in my mind, to hurt us and not help us. And it...
All right, Tucker. That fucking settles it. Oh, shit. Okay. Wow, case closed. All right. Trump said he wasn't on the list.
And I know him. He's not that, for whatever his sins, I don't think he's that guy, actually. I don't think he likes creepy sex stuff. That's just my view.
I mean, but well, if he, I mean, isn't it weird though that he made like a lot of comments about women? Didn't he make sexual comments about his own daughter when she's like 13? Like, I mean,
I'm talking about the people that are attacking ICE every single night. You can laugh all you want, Gotham, but let me tell you what, this is why our city failed. Can I get my time back? Can I get my time back, please? My name is David Medina, and I'm here to speak in favor of ICE and in favor of law enforcement, in favor of the rule of law here in Portland, something that's been missing for so long. I'd like to thank the Gotham City Council for allowing me to speak today. If you guys, one of the biggest things that you guys do is you guys talk about no one's above the law, and you voted for a convicted felon. It's one of your favorite phrases that you and your comrades like to use, especially against President Trump. But then you completely ignore some of the people that ICE are taking out of our community that pose as a threat to our community. And Councilwoman Murillo, I really hope that you shed those same tears for the victims of those people on the other side of those illegal immigrants that shouldn't have been here, that committed crimes. I do share compassion for families. I do share compassion for people that are facing deportation, like the dad that was deported from his family. I share compassion on that. I'm talking about the illegal, the people that have committed crimes here that the state of Oregon and the city of Portland have refused to honor the ICE detainers on. I wonder if you shed those same tears for the victims of those people, like Leonis Ramos Garcia, who was picked up for coercion and enticement of a minor to engage in unlawful sexual activity and travel with intent to engage in illicit sexual contact. These are the kind of people that ICE are taking out of our communities. And you guys say you want to keep. You can shake your head all you want. You want to keep our community safe. It's no wonder Portland's going downhill, because you have the Portland Trailblazers, the Portland Timbers. You have businesses leaving the city, businesses that say please prioritize public safety. And it's no wonder that this city is going downhill, because you guys don't respect law enforcement. You hold them hostage just like you hold the rest of the city hostage. You demonize ICE. You demonize police officers in Portland. And I pray that one day, the majority of Portland that don't agree with how you guys are gathering and your comrades that are attacking the ICE building down there every single night and attacking officers, not the peaceful protesters. I'm talking about the people that are attacking ICE every single night. You can laugh all you want, Gotham, but let me tell you what, this is...
We're spitting facts, man.
That this is all ibadah, and that this is all counted for by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the conversation of doxing, the conversation of getting arrested and suspended, I think it's time for Muslims to start to say, all right, so what? Do what you want. I'm gonna do what I gotta do, because it's about time to do that. And I know everybody has their own families and has an education and everything. It's just a question. We don't want to get doxxed, and we don't want to get suspended, and we don't want to get arrested. How gangsta are you? That's just my question. How much are you willing to do it? And I know everyone has their own risk levels, but at the end of the day, that's a question to ask ourselves. How committed am I to this? To what extent of my personal material gains am I willing to sacrifice for this bigger noble cause? And subhanAllah, I truly believe that when your heart is in the right place, if you get suspended, if you get doxxed, because it's bound to happen when you're doing a righteous cause and when you're doing something for the sake of Allah here in the West, it will never ever be in vain. And the true believer does not fear that, because the true believer knows that the akhirah is a promise.
I'm sorry, what?
They said I like your bike.
Oh, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The driveway immediately.
You're done too. Next, 30 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds is disgusting.
Yeah, well, yeah. Come on up. Enjoy your terrorist rag. Come on, let's go. You're next. Come on. What's your name? I'm the chairman. I can say what I want. If you don't like it, you can leave. Come on. You're next. I'll clear the room, and then we can move on if I hear one more outburst. I don't have to have any of you sit here. One more. I'll clear.
Oh, look at this guy.
I'm not a Trump hater, right? But like, I remember when that happened. Yeah, like, I mean, who does that? It wasn't his daughter? Oh, that makes it so much better.
But more, I think, convincing is that this is all information that the Biden administration had.
Uh-huh.
And if there was evidence that Trump had been involved in illegal sexual activity,
this one makes more sense.
You think the people who made up Russiagate wouldn't have leaked it?
Exactly.
Right. Come on
yeah,
now.
They would have leaked it.
So the only other explanation that I can think of, again, maybe you've got another, is that intel services are at the very center of this story, U.S. and Israeli, and they're being protected. I think that seems like the most plausible.
That's the most obvious. They have a history of this.
Nope. I think they're both wrong. I think the reason why is that everybody inside of leadership, inside of all Western culture, leadership, fucking Great Britain, the UK, the Europe, fucking France. Where are some of those other bullshit countries over there? Germany, all those.
Hey, so remember when I did the video, a couple days ago that I was talking about the floods, and I said that there are going to be, for 100% sure, liberal psychos on the internet who are going to, celebrate that this happened, and I expect there to be a lot of other liberals who defend them afterwards. Remember that? Oh, weird. Almost like I know how this thing goes. So this person, who I'll speak much more colorfully, in a much more colorful manner in about 30 seconds, once I get past the first minute, and once I get past the first minute, and I'm allowed to swear. Okay, so this psychotic bunt is now out looking for a new job. Okay, she's a pediatrician. Okay, who danced on the graves of dead children. Okay. Now, the reason why my effect is the way it is because it's going to take everything I have not to completely flip out during this video. So I'm going to try to keep it light as best I can, because every time I flip out, I say things I can't say on the internet and I end up having to restart. So don't take my jovial tone for anything other than a genuine attempt to not descend into threatening violence on people, so on and so forth, etc. Okay. So also, this woman too. So we're going to take a look at what she said. She's a sweetheart. And then there's some other lady who also got fired because she was very flippant and nasty about dead children in the floods. And then this gem, you guys may recall, Destiny, who I'm going to talk about extensively in this video. So he did the whole thing, right? He's making fun of children. I'll show you what I responded to him with actually shortly. All right, so I just filmed the Destiny portion of the video because I knew I could do him and not get mad, not actually lose my shit completely, because I knew that I would lose my shit if I showed this first and then talked about the other women where I'm actually going to lose it. Because Destiny's trolling, just to be clear. He's just a person. He's just a sociopath who kind of knows he can get a rise out of people. But and also I have him by the balls, dude. I have information about him where say whatever you want, dude. You know what I'm going to say back every single time, right? You already know what I'm going to say back every single time. So you guys can look for that at the back half of the video because I already recorded it. All right, so now let's look at this though, okay? In one of the most this is okay, so this is a picture of the actual cabin where all the girls were swept away. This is where they were all sleeping. And the water ripped through there and took all of them. Okay, so this is them. These are the kids that were in that cabin who are all dead. So yeah. So that's what we're talking about here. These girls, these girls, not random numbers on a screen. These girls, these baby little Christian girls who were at a camp, okay, swept away, dead, okay, which is why my language is probably going to sound the way that it does when we look at this. I'm gonna need a word. I'm gonna need a word to replace the word that rhymes with bunt and starts with a C, because every time that I look at one of these chicks, that's the word that is going to come out if I don't stop myself, and that's an instant demonetization on YouTube. So bunt is going to serve as that word. So this. This fucking bunt right here. She was the former Houston mayoral appointee. She said, consequences for what? Maybe it was God's will to wash them little bunts away, is what she said. I'm just gonna get off of her because I'm gonna say things that I really shouldn't. But her life's over now. Her life is over. She's fired, denounced, disgraced, as it should be. And then this woman, okay, this is the woman. She's a pediatrician in Texas. Okay, this is a pediatrician in Texas. So. She got fired, but let me show you what she said. She got fired for, she's a pediatrician, dude. She's a child doctor. She's a child doctor. And this bunt, God, it just doesn't hit the same, dude. It feels like, it feels like someone is like taunting me and I'm sparring, you know, like feels like someone's taunting me, and then like I throw a shot and it just like barely kind of like grazes their head. Like when I'm mad, like I really want to land hard and it just like, kind of, you know, that feeling where and like it leaves you kind of feeling like empty inside. That's what calling her a bunt does for me. Anyway, pediatrician fired. So a pediatrician has been fired over a vile post suggesting that more than 80 killed in the horrific Texas floods, including dozens of kids, were President Trump supporters who got what they voted for. Dr. Christina B. Probst drew widespread scorn following the disparaging since deleted post under her old Facebook name, Christina. May all visitors' children, May all visitors' children, non-MAGA voters, and pets be safe and dry. Well, I guess she did at least like, you know, she did, I guess, like identify like she's hoping for children to be dry. You know, I would imagine that was probably her defense for this, which makes me laugh my ass off. Imagining this one, like, so you see her little like smug face right here? You know, this is her like smug face. Yeah, I'm a child pediatrician. I'm a good person. You're like, no, you're not. I want you to picture this smug face in the meeting when she got fired and her begging for her fucking job, begging for her job, trying to explain herself. Okay. So picture her face. It was a momentary lapse. And I want you to imagine what she's dealing with right now. Okay, right now. Imagining what her future prospects are. You know, like what are your future? Who's gonna hire you? Oh, here, let's just Google her. Like, oh, so Dr. Christina Probst. Oh, she's a doctor. You know, applying for a job. So let's Google her. Oh, she's the one who publicly got fired for dancing on the graves of dead 7-year-olds. So hey, good luck in your job search, you fucking bunt. Okay, enjoy. This is what you deserve. This is what you deserve. This is what I'm saying, dude. Like, we can go back and forth all day long, dude. We can go back and forth all day long with this stuff. And the reality is, it's them. They live in a world that is not real, okay? Where they're saying, oh, all these MAGA people, whatever. Show me. Like, show me. Show me a big MAGA influencer or a big Trump supporting like influencer who's ever said anything like what you are saying here. You know what I mean? Like, just go ahead. Find me like when the fires were burning and there were like dead kids and the people were like, haha, they're Democrat kids. Just go ahead. Show me one. Oh, none? Right. I know. Okay. Let's listen to this. Person.
Say it because y'all scary as fuck and I don't give a damn. Them little girls, them people died because of racism, not politics. Boom, I said it, I don't give a fuck. And I said no. No. Because more YT people will have to DIE in order for motherfuckers to what? CARE. I said what the fuck I said. I don't give a fuck and minds are here with me. We voted the correct way. You reap what the fuck you sow.
Hey, I reap what I sow, you fucking moron. I have an idea. How about you go back to your school and ask them how come you don't know how to fucking talk? Okay, how about that? Okay? Because I feel like people would be a little bit more compelled by your arguments if you knew how to speak English. I had to cut off about 30 seconds of stuff I said. I told you I'm not good at these ones, man. Not good at these. Let's continue listening to this evil, psychotic lunatic.
Just the night before the flash flood happened, y'all were okay with motherfuckers being stripped away from their motherfucking families and never seeing them again. People being deported. Y'all were okay with that.
Oh yeah, I remember when the reason I wanted people deported was because I wanted their families broken up, as opposed to all of the inhuman machine that is MAGA. Okay. Don't ever let these vermin bully you into civility while they hide behind their veneer of convenient cruelties. Okay. Right. And then here's one of the things that he said also about the kids, because he's saying like, oh my God, they're clutching their pearls because I said something nasty about dead children. Well, guess what? So let me show you who he is. So if you don't know who Destiny is, though, this is him. Okay, so I'll just play a little bit of this for you, right? And then just so you could put a face and voice with the person who's making fun of dead kids, and then we'll talk about him, who he is, like how you should respond to him when it comes to this thing, and we'll go from there.
Announced forming of America Party and further break from Trump. Who could have ever guessed? The friendship timelines are like so accelerated with this dude.
So if you look in the back of his room, and you see like, oh wow, he has all these guns back there, dude. I guess that means that no one should point out that in a fist fight, he has no chance of winning, like ever, against literally anyone. I think that's honestly what he's doing there. Like I really believe that. Okay, like he's got some guns. I have probably 4 times as many as that, but or 5 even maybe. I don't know. It's neither here nor there. He's displaying them though, because he knows he is constantly saying things where people would beat the shit out of him if he said it in person. So he's like, hey, here are the guns. He's like, so before you even say like you beat me up, like I have lots of guns. It's like, yeah, I have lots too, dude. You gonna shoot me, guy? Scary. But let's just actually go through this though, right? So here is what he posted. And before I get into what an absolute degenerate, like sick person this guy is, I just want to point out he's also an absolute fucking genius. Okay, like I mean that seriously. It's unfortunate that he and I have to be on opposite ends of the world because I actually have a lot of respect for what he does in terms of his ability to gain attention. It's brilliant, honestly. Okay, so like here, right? He says, I heard God killed those kids because they were using NordVPN promo code Destiny to get around the Texas corn ban. So when I read that, I was like, wow, like you guys saw the video that I did about the missing, the missing 27 missing girls. Teenagers you can confess to about fantasizing about, quote, child concubines that only exist to pleasure you. Demented kitty fucker, degenerate meth head. You should make jokes about dead kids in person. Then at least I'll respect your moxie once you're released from the hospital. It's one of those things that's like, the guy said in writing, okay, to some girl he's gooning with, that he fantasizes about a young child that only exists to pleasure him. So, if he wants to talk about like, oh, the MAGA guys or the blah, 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 wants like Epstein list, whatever he wants to talk about, it's like, yeah, but you fantasize about little kids that you can, put your hands on or you know what I mean? So like you can't win. Like you can't win. There's no winning here, okay? There's no winning. You can't win. You are a person who fantasizes about children, okay?
So I just got to the office. I'm going to go throw up, actually. And this only happens every few years when something really, really bad happens or something. I mean, I'm physically going to puke probably right now. My mouth is watering right now.
Just hours ago, we heard from police following dozens of arrests in downtown. Officers say while things were mostly peaceful for the 4th of July holiday, police took about 60 people into custody, including dozens of juveniles. Their parents were also cited. Some of the charges involved guns and illegal fireworks. Police increased patrols for the holiday weekend after several years of lawlessness downtown.
One of the biggest tragedies about living in the United States of America is the fact that we have all of these wonderful holiday weekends meant to celebrate and or commemorate certain important, crucial moments.
That it looks like in practice from a doctor's perspective.
Genocide is absolutely gruesome, and we've seen it. We've seen it in the history books. We are making history now. And that's why what we're seeing looks like it's from the history books. Our teams that are on the ground in
So we have been on the trans athletic story for so long that we had a video already made when this broke. So Donald Trump. brought in Peyton McNabb, who we actually covered in a previous segment, who legit, she got spiked in a volleyball match and permanently injured and paralyzed. So she was at the State of the Union. Here's a little bit of what Trump had to say.
Ago, Peyton McNabb was an all-star high school athlete, one of the best, preparing for a future in college sports. But when her girls' volleyball match was invaded by a male, he smashed the ball so hard in Peyton's face, causing traumatic brain injury, partially paralyzing her right side and ending her athletic career. It was a shot like she's never seen before. She's never seen anything like it. Peyton is here tonight in the gallery, and Peyton, from now on, schools will kick the men off the girls' team or they will lose all federal funding.
Okay, now needless to say, that is a very popular majoritarian position. It has never not been a majoritarian position. Now, rapid response here, tweet it out, maybe make your case in a not disgusting way like that. So like I said, we already had a video because we covered a deranged rant that Emma went on. I believe this was December 2023 by the date of the video that we made. So this is a very tightened up cut of it. If you go to my Twitter, Russell Dobular, you go to Do Dissidents, you can see a more extended version, but this is a shorter version of the video we made.
Argument is really bad on this, and you're out of your depth. You're correct that trans women should be able to compete in women's sports, but your argument for it is just scientifically and factually incorrect. I'm actually not bad about this. I'm 100% right on this. I don't give a shit about the scientific explanations. People, if they identify as a woman, get to compete in sports. If that's not fair in the short term for a variety of little competitions, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit because the societal interests of including trans people in society trump. Stupid competition. Full stop. So I'm right about this. You're wrong about this.
Once the gun went off, the two transgender athletes took off flying and left all of us girls in the dust.
I mean, I hear this all the time. My daughter plays sports. What am I going to tell to her? You know, it's not fair to her to compete with this kind of person.
I was severely injured in a high school volleyball game by a transgender athlete on the opposing team. I suffered from a concussion and neck injury that to this day I'm still recovering from. There's not even evidence to show that this is the case, but just take their assertion at face value for a second, that this is some unfair advantage. I mean, there's an unfair advantage all the time in sports. That's actually quite, that's the nature of sports. Honestly, like women's sports, it's barely an institution. It's only been around for a few decades. Like if our sources of, our outlets for entertainment, for competition, for like, I don't know however to define them. But if they're not able to accommodate trans people, then they're not worthy of existing. Like it's just like we're talking about movie theaters. What are we talking about here? I mean, I love sports as much as anyone, but if they cannot accommodate, including trans people, I don't give a shit about them being robust. It's just, you know, be inclusive or don't be. That's it. Or don't exist.
I mean, the movie theater thing is just so unbelievably stupid.
It's insane. Yes. It's a short
injury, McNabb said.
Pertinent, but an argument for better planning and more transparent discussions. Your argument is really bad on this, and you're out of your depth. You're correct that trans women should be able to compete in women's sports, but your argument for it is just scientifically and factually incorrect. I'm actually not bad about this. I'm 100% right on this. I don't give a shit about the scientific explanations. People, if they identify as a woman, get to compete in sports. If that's not fair in the short term for a variety of little competitions, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit because the societal interests of including trans people in society trumps stupid competition. Full stop. So I'm right about this. You're wrong about this. Anyway, Dr. Shock, I agree. Let's get rid of weight classes in all combat sports. Perhaps have grown man compete in Little League. Sometimes life's not fair. Whatever.
So what I love about this clip in particular is in a little bit
to compete in sports. If that's not fair in the short term for a variety of little competitions, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit.
Partially paralyzing her right side and ending her athletic career. It was
If that's not fair in the short term for a variety of little competitions, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit.
And by the way, this is not the first time Emma has completely lost her mind over the transes issues. Remember, Anna Kasparian saying that she didn't want to be called a birthing person was enough for Emma Vigeland to backstab her former mentor and constantly attack her former network because they're so bad, they're so evil, they're so terrible, because Anna doesn't like this ridiculous language that, by the way, nobody in the United States of America likes. Again, insanity from top to bottom, but to make matters even worse, this is the same woman who was crying over Kamala Harris's loss, and the thing that aggravated her in particular was that there wasn't enough solidarity amongst women. The girls, they didn't vote for Kamala in the way that Emma thought they should, and that was really, really sad for her, really, really heartbreaking, and that's why we got this clip right here.
One thing I'll just get a little emotional about is it does, as a woman, feel pretty shitty. I feel like the humanity of women and their rights, no one cares. And even in the face of Trump and everything that he represented, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Could you imagine being Emma Vigeland, never having a real problem, never having a real struggle in your entire life, going to a private elementary school that costs more than top universities' tuition, enjoying the suffragists like Emma who act like they're better than the therefore she is a
it does, as a woman, feel pretty I feel like the humanity of women and their rights.
But yeah, I mean, the white woman fake crying thing, I could do it too, but and then you just turn it off.
No one cares. And even in the face of Trump and everything that he represented, that's a tough pill to swallow.
This is derangement on a monstrous level, and rather than treat it like an isolated incident, it is important for you guys to understand that this is the belief system, this is the ideology of the people who want biological males to compete against females in sports. This is what they feel. If you get injured, sucks to be you, sad day for you. I hope you go curl up into a ball and die because it's hilarious, just like the trans thought it was hilarious after injuring Peyton, and now Emma, years later, still thinks it's funny. Well, guess what? It's not funny, and we're fighting back against it. We are going to pass laws, we're going to cut off funding, we're going to do everything and anything in order to prevent this from happening, and people like you, Emma, being in the opposition is the greatest favor toward our side that we could possibly have. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys have her
I feel pill to swallow.
So the Republicans and more seem to think that, well, maybe since our entire campaign strategy of calling Joe Biden both a puppet master and an old man is now out the window because allowed to from Trump. Percentage positive. Does people there know what the World Cup is?
Also, check out Pat's house.
It's a little sparse up top, isn't it? And that's the same place where Harris was, right? And they, I noticed they took a lot more down by the dais.
Men beat up women in the name of tolerance, but you look at what's happening over in Paris. It will never happen here. I will never let it happen. I will get all males off your daughter's soccer teams and volleyball teams and get them out of your locker rooms once and for all. That's going to be cleaned up. And we will.
How many people in that stadium, convention hall, whatever it is, go, oh, thank God, because we have so many males on my daughter's soccer team. Like, they all think they know somebody who has that problem in a neighboring school.
He's training them all to, like, if the extent that they watch any sort of Little League, it's going to be as some sort of freak paranoid looking for some sort of person trying to pass.
We have already talked about the implications of this. And we have a couple of examples of kids having to have their genitalia inspected to make sure that they're actually girls. The idea that they're having to return to the transphobia, the only thing I can tell you, as horrific as it is for trans people, because it inspire more right-wing legislatures to pass legislation. Because you can get away with this in red states. I mean, 15 years ago, you get away with like passing anti-Sharia laws because they were afraid that Indiana was becoming a no-go state or something. Because there was going to be something about you can do this if you're in deep red country or just red country. But as an electoral matter, this is not helpful for the Republicans. They dumped $50 million into Michigan in 2022, and it failed. And this is why, like, But why are the Republicans talking about this? Is because it gives them something to sort of like shift the conversation. And why are we talking about it is just so that, like, A, we can point out they're desperate. They're trying to change the conversation. And B, the reason why we talk about it is to remind you that A, there is no electoral salience for this issue at all. And B, this is a question of human rights. Here is Francesca Fiorentini on ostensibly a progressive show making the argument that this is all BS. But apparently, even after 2022, where we know the implications of this electorally, some people still haven't gotten the message.
So, first of all, when you have an extreme position that says, no, we don't ever ask anyone. And I think the Olympics position is actually absurd. They don't do any genetic testing. They don't do any testing. So you could, since they don't do any testing at all, you just walk in, call yourself a female, not be trans. Trans people are actually...
Do it, Jane. Do it.
Okay, yeah, all right, well, you can say it, but then what's going to happen?
Incidentally, just as a factual matter, this is not true. In boxing, the IOC just requires a passport that says your gender. If your passport says you're male and you walk in there, now, I don't know how you walk into the Olympics. Like, I'm pretty good at softball, but I don't think I could just walk into the Olympics. I'm not bad at archery, but I don't think I could walk into the Olympics and, get on the American. Incidentally, all of these teams, there are organizations that police these questions in their home countries. In Algeria, again, you cannot be transgender. There is no passport that you can get that says female unless you were born female.
And there's pictures of her as a little girl.
Yes. But I'm just talking about the factual matter. Right. The Olympics just say walk in. No, the Olympics basically defer to international organizations that create the rules for different sports. Now, you could say, well, that organization is, I don't like this organization, I don't like that organization, I like the way they do it. But as a factual matter, the idea that you can walk into the Olympics as a woman and play men's basketball is obviously absurd. In fact, you can't walk into the Olympics even if you're a man and play men's basketball because there's a process.
Okay, yeah, all right, well, you can say it, but then what's going to happen? Somebody's going to do it, and they're going to get away with it, and then everybody's going to be furious, okay? It's, all right, I can't stand it. And it doesn't help trans people at all to have these extreme positions. Oh, yeah, don't test anyone, just take their word for it. I think it's terrible politics.
It's not a extreme position, it comes from a position of human rights, and it does help all.
It's not a human right.
What you see there is when, what you just saw are women, or biological women, being attacked for being trans because of the anti-trans athletic narrative that has already festered and has now come for these women. And so what do the women do? Say, I'm not a man. In fact, screw, I'm not a trans man. Are you kidding me? No, we all stand in solidarity together. That's how we actually fight the right when it comes to their bull crap culture wars that lead nowhere, and it doesn't serve. Look, I understand, Jake, you're in the majority. I'm in the minority. Most people disagree that trans athletes should participate in Olympic sports. Most people don't agree with me. But hell, man, I'm willing to stand on a hill that is unpopular and fight for people and for their human rights.
Yeah, look, we could spend an hour debating this, and I have in the past. But when...
Not really, though.
Yeah.
Not really debate, more of an agreement.
Okay, whatever. I'm happy to debate anybody about it. I think I don't agree. Okay. You're never going to get me to agree by saying it's a left-wing position. It's a pro-trans position. I don't think it's a pro-trans position at all.
Just offer a platform. You don't have to.
All right. So when your opponent is in the middle of doing something radical, step out of the way and let them do it instead of stepping in the way and saying, hey, I'm more radical. Okay, I think it's terrible politics. It's terrible for trans people.
First of all, we don't need to go further. There's absolutely zero data points to support the idea that defending trans people is bad politics. You can look at polls that say whatever, 50%, 60%, 70%, 80% of people think that biological, that people born at as a man, assigned the gender of a man at birth should not be.
Why are they so fucking weird? Democrats are so fucking weird.
Playing softball or whatever it is. But as an electoral matter, people don't care. At the end of the day, people don't care. I mean, we have seen much, in some instances, to my dismay and others' dismay, 70, 80% of people want gun control. But point to me an election that has turned on it. It's just not high enough on people's priorities in terms of when it comes to voting. Trans for normal people, i.e. non-cultural warrior right-wingers. Trans issues are number 25 on the list of things that they would vote for, or vote upon, because for the most part, people are like, it doesn't affect me. And it doesn't seem to affect it. It's one thing to say, okay, we're going to allow sporting associations to police their sports. And I'm going to lobby the sports organization to do this, or I'm going to lobby the sports organization to do that. But I don't know what difference it makes if you were born you were assigned a female gender at birth and you've chosen male gender, at age 25. I don't know how that impacts your archery. Let the Archery Association figure it out. But to make it a political issue, to accept that it's a political issue, is a right-wing frame. I don't care if you think that no trans people should be allowed to play in shot put or whatever it is. But when you start talking about it as a political issue, you just have there's zero support. That's just you playing out some type of fantasy in your head.
Yeah, we need to respond to a hypothetical Joanna Mann scenario when we have actually a real situation staring us in the face. And guess what? It's the right wing being hysterical about this once again.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I just resent the constant, the left needs to get their shit together. No, some people in the media need to get their shit together.
Yeah. Mama Feastalies, I can't pronounce that. I'd like to point out trans people have been allowed in the Olympics for over 20 years, and we have yet to dominate like Jenkins fear-mongering about. Not a single medal has gone to a trans person playing in a different gender from their AGAP. I don't know what that stands for, but their gender assigned at birth. Oh, that's what it is. It doesn't help trans people, says the cis guy who's demonstrated his ignorance multiple times. Jenkins pretending to be an ally to be transphobic, utterly vile. Nova, this is also the perfect issue to call the Republicans weird on. 100%. When Donald Trump says to a stadium full of people, I'm going to be the one who gets that male off your girls' soccer team, 85% of the country just goes what are you talking about, dude? And the other 15%, the majority of those just think they know somebody. In fact, Not just the majority, like almost every single 9.9 out of 10.
This is the most unpopular issue coming from the Democrats. No parents want their fucking kids playing sports with the opposite gender. I don't know what. It's like obvious.
And I find the argument kind of hard to like. It seems like a bit of a logical reach. I guess I'm maybe giving them too much credit here. But the idea of like pinning this on Kamala Harris, that like an Algerian boxer fighting an Italian boxer at a world athletic event is somehow in some way a referendum on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's stewardship of what exactly?
No, this is like talking about like there's a caravan forming in Paraguay, and it's going to be here in 9 months
on election day.
And it's absurd. We got to talk about this. We don't talk about it. The Democrats are going to lose. Give me a break. Jesus. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out. Eddie Hassan hosted an Al Jazeera event, which included a couple of panelists. Emmanuel Nabhan, Tel Aviv University lecturer. Benny Morris, formerly of the sort of new historians who got all the documents from the Israeli government in the 80s that showed that the narrative of who was living in Palestine and who wasn't, and what kind of society existed prior to the establishment of Israel was wrong. He subsequently found it too difficult, I guess, to live with that reality.
You got to do his position now.
But here's the first clip. Levy was a member of the Israeli government. He was one of the negotiators for the Oslo Accords, I believe it was, right? And we've interviewed him many times over the years. Here he is.
Next to recent MR guest, Nana Butu.
Yep.
The only country in the Middle East where Arabs can elect their officials, be elected, be judges at the Supreme Court, be president of a university. The only free country in the Middle East is Israel.
Dan, do you want to respond to that?
I find it staggering that the gentleman to my right is telling the Palestinian citizen of Israel how she is experiencing the reality under which she lives. It's a staggering moment for me. Now, there were different strands to Zionism, okay? There was a cultural Zionism, there was a binational Zionism. This could have gone in different directions. From the perspective of 2024, 70...
These people, oh, that's... If my channel grows bigger than hers, I'll consider myself successful.
Honestly, like women's sports, it's barely an institution. It's only been around for a few decades. Like if our sources of our outlets for entertainment, for competition, for like I don't know however to define them. But if they're not able to accommodate trans people, then they're not worthy of existing. Like it's just like we're talking about movie theaters. What are we talking about here? I mean, I love sports as much as anyone, but if they cannot accommodate, including trans people, I don't give a shit about them being robust. It's just, be inclusive or don't be. That's it. Or don't exist.
Okay.
Aren't you
Not
glad, Blair, that we have these white, straight allies to just to stand up for trans rights like this? Like,
Right. This is what we were talking about throughout this episode, which is like the best thing that these white lived out bitches could do for us is just shut up, because you're arguing for things that don't even make sense for us. So the idea that because I am trans, that every lane is for me and I should be included in any and every area of life is simply illogical. It simply doesn't make sense. And it's incongruent with how to actually properly integrate trans people into things. The conversation should not be trans people should be included in sports at all costs. The argument should be trans people should be included in sports where it's appropriate. Examples of where that's appropriate are going to be trans leagues. If there's so many trans athletes out there, why the aren't there trans leagues at this point? I actually think that'd be kind of cool to watch. I would love to watch a bunch of trannies like tackle each other and do football and shit. Like, I think that'd be lit, and I think a lot of people would watch that just for the like.
Let's talk about the Democratic Party, because ever since November, the Democratic Party, we've been engaged in some recriminations, some infighting, yes, but also I think a pretty good faith bit of soul searching about who we are and how to run going forward. And more recently, the debate has been less about policy or ideological lines and more about how hard to fight. So I assume, Emma, you're on team fight very hard. If so, like, what are you seeing out there that feels smart tactically, or I don't know, just genuinely inspiring you?
Here's as we talk about tariffs, it's a good way to just say Chuck Schumer giving away
all of our leverage, is a huge reason why we're in this situation with tariffs, because the continuing resolution that was not a continuing resolution, it was a dirty CR in the dirtiest sense, it basically removed Congress's ability to review these tariffs. And so now you have this bipartisan bill with Grassley and I think Cantwell that is supposed to say, like, hey, can we reassert our authority over tariffs because Donald Trump just did a really bad thing? Well, look, the Democratic leader in the Senate just gave that leverage away. And I think, obviously, in my view, Schumer's time, he's on borrowed time as leader of the Democrats in the Senate. I don't see how the Democrats can continue to have him as leader, especially, after the midterms in 2026. But yeah, there are some bright spots. I think that it was encouraging to see the House all stand together on that continuing resolution vote. It is encouraging to see some members of the party speak about billionaires, speak about the oligarchy. It's encouraging to hear, I heard Tim Walz on Molly Jong Fast Show talk about how next election cycle people are going to be expecting universal health care as a part of these proposals. Going bold again is really important. And I try not to pigeonhole my politics, right? Because I'm a DSA member, right? And I'm someone who obviously believes strongly in something like Palestinian liberation, but I can also encourage my listeners to vote for Kamala Harris because that's the best option within our set of circumstances. Right. And I can appreciate Bernie Sanders' outside politics and how incredible it is to get people involved, but Elizabeth Warren's inside politics and influencing Biden to appoint Lena Khan, as I keep singing her praises throughout our conversation. But there is more consistency here, I think, than there was in the wake of 2016, where there was a lot of anger within the party, and I think there still is that. But there's also just a universal desire to fight, and it crosses ideological lines. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her ability to honestly meld Bernie Sanders' outside movement with the inside game of Elizabeth Warren is one of the most impressive things that I've seen in politics for quite some time. She's getting centrist Democratic lawmakers to say, I will write a check if you primary Chuck Schumer. And that is incredible, given the fact that she came into politics as a Democratic socialist and a rabble-rouser who was going into Nancy Pelosi's office and helping the Sunrise Movement stage protests. But I think that with this kind of insurgent movement of younger progressives in the House, there is a lot of anger, I think, at some of the folks in the Senate who are institutionalists. But I get the most hope from folks in the House, Democrats in the House, and also our governors, who, whether it's Pritzker, Whitmer, Walz, what have you, they understand what it's like to respond to Donald Trump as somebody who's in an executive role, not someone who's legislating or negotiating with Republicans or treating our budget as contract law or as if we're doing a merger or something like that. It's somebody who knows how to lead and somebody who knows how to respond to Trump's actions, not as somebody who's going to tweak around the edges. But using the bully pulpit to cut through the noise, because I'll shut up in just a second, Tommy, but we are in such a corroded media environment, and especially on the right. They're just eating up this slop on the internet. How do we break through? How do we break through? And having a simple message doesn't mean we're stupid. In fact, it means we're better at politics. And I think Democrats have to stop resting on our laurels and thinking that just because our policies are better than the Republicans, that's true. It doesn't mean it's self-evident to voters, and it doesn't mean they're dumb because they don't get it. It's also because people want a clear, coherent vision and a way to differentiate yourself from the other side. And it's not about converting those Republicans.
Yeah, right. So go live in your grifter echo chamber where you guys can play songs with bad audio and then say, whoopsie.
I'm sorry, that audio thing really upset you.
Against the better advice of my doctor, I watched 2.5 hours of Tim Pool's show. Now, there's a good reason for that. It's because Emma Vigeland of the Majority Report was on, and it was a very good discussion. Emma did a fantastic job here, and there is very little opportunity for people like this to appear on shows like this. So I think it's worth highlighting some good moments here. And also, in the process of doing so, discuss a couple of dishonest things that Tim Pool does that are very clear here, and I want to highlight that. But let me get to, since there are a lot of clips here. I think I clipped out eight different clips. 8 or 7. We'll see. There's a lot. So let me get to the first one here where they're discussing the difference between, this right at the beginning. They're discussing the difference between left media and right media.
Part of what we do is we try to respond to some of the right-wing ecosystem on the internet because there's a vacuum truly left. You guys have a lot more money than the left-wing media space. We just try to combat it a little bit.
I think the issue with that, I can understand why you'd say that, but it looks like this is a great way to kick off the show, actually, like the start of the culture. I actually don't think that whatever this space has more money because this is a fractured, independent space of varying ideologies.
Tim, I'm in your compound right now.
Yeah, I'm rich.
I live in a one-bedroom. I mean, how did you get rich?
I started a website, took memberships, sold ads on videos.
Yeah, but the reason that you get ads and that we don't is because you more adequately serve capitalism and we challenge it.
We got ads pulled.
The Majority Report works and uses Amazon Web Services, and they run ads too. So they just don't do a good job at it.
What do you mean? There's whole organizations dedicated to getting all of our ads removed.
Right, but the proof is in the pudding and where I'm sitting right now.
So this is memberships. This is almost entirely because people pay to become members of websites. If the Majority Report, you guys have been around a lot longer than I have. The inability to provide a product to a customer does not mean that one political faction has more or is granted more because of capitalism or anything like that. Like if Sam is unable to, Sam's had way more subscribers than me for a long, long time.
Right.
And he just like, I'm not saying this to be like me. I'm saying if he doesn't know how to turn revenue, the issue is more so you need like a COO or somebody who's going to say, here's how we provide something to a market that generates revenue so we can expand our business. So we're better at that here, I suppose, is the easy way to put it.
Well, no, because what you say here is more attractive to investors and advertisers. I mean, we're basically only members. And other right-wing media like the Daily Wire and stuff like that. And even what I'm looking at the Rumble, I don't know what you call that logo right there.
Looks like a rectangle.
Yeah, I mean that's a David Sachs. That's a venture capital-backed venture, I believe. At the very least, Peter Thiel is involved and invested. There's no equivalent on the left.
So Emma makes some great points here about how there is no equivalent of Rumble on the left because there isn't obvious billionaire investor money investing into socialists that want to see the end of billionaires. But I do think it's impossible to know how Tim Pool actually makes all of his money. We can't see his books, clearly, obviously. So all we can do is speculate. What I do know is and it's discussed here, Tim Pool kind of lays it bare, his focus is on making money.
a show like The Majority Report, their focus is on doing a show that educates people. So when you have those two different goals in mind, the place where their focus is making money, guess what? They're going to be better at making money. And a part of that is through a lot of clickbait. I mean, you go on Tim Pool's show, it's a lot of culture worship because
The Majority Report, all their thumbnails are clickbait. It is the clickbait show.
he knows that's what generates a lot of clicks, a lot of views, a lot of ads because of that, or ads benefiting him because of the amount of attention that those sorts of videos get. So it's just a very different playing field. If your focus is making money, yeah, you're gonna make more money. If your focus is on doing a show that educates, which that's what the Majority Report does, and there's a lot of, the misinformation that Tim Pool's.
The reason Majority Report is so poorly performing is because they espouse horribly unpopular opinions. They're not that funny to listen to, and they're pretty retarded. Like, Emma Vigeland is a straight up retard. She's retarded. The only reason she's on there is because she's moderately good looking.
About Majority Report is just ridiculous. They do I think like a 3-hour show every single day. The first hour of the show, they are interviewing some expert in some field. Like it is very dry at times. It is very educational. That's the point of the show. If you check out Tim Pool's show, look, it may be more entertaining for some people, but they have a whole different goal in mind, and that is not to inform. So if you're looking to be informed, there's only one show to choose here, and that's the Majority Report. We're going to get to the next clip here, and this is about healthcare. I think crime is mixed in with this, and housing.
Why do you think 25 people got shoved in front of trains last year?
I don't know, dude.
Well, that's a legitimate question. You're saying poverty and desperation results in crime. I'm wondering why it is that you've had these homeless guys. They've been predominantly, I think it's almost entirely these homeless guys, shoving people in front of trains. Last year it was 25. And so that is...
So that's a mental health problem. I mean, we do have a mental health problem in this country. We have an issue with not having socialized healthcare, where people are unable to access healthcare, mental healthcare in particular, but also every other kind of healthcare. I mean, 28 million uninsured people in this country. That's a massive problem. I mean, what is your stance on Medicare for all and healthcare?
I'm for universal healthcare.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, I think we'd have to have some kind of like basic coverage for a universal standard, meaning like if you're having an episode, this is particularly where we bring you in and we help you. If you're broken bones, flu, things that it's like relatively simple and knowledge based.
All right. So this is around a larger discussion connecting poverty to crime, as Emma does. I'll get to another clip that also discusses that. But Tim Pool here, saying that he supports universal healthcare. And he has said this before, that he supports universal healthcare. With all of the politicians that you support, Donald Trump, the Republican Party, when they don't support that at all and have tried to do the opposite, taking away healthcare from people, you can't, as a content creator, as someone who has a platform like this, you can't pretend, or even, let's say he, in his heart, really does support universal healthcare. If how you use your platform is advocating for people that don't support that, you cannot pretend to actually care about that issue when you are using your power to support people that are against those positions. Like this is how
just because you support something doesn't mean it's like reality. Universal healthcare has been the biggest. It is one of the biggest things that has brought down some of the most successful countries. Venezuela is like the most recent example. Cuba.
How Tim Pool skirts around the fact that he is clearly a right-winger is, oh, well, I personally support abortion rights. I personally support universal healthcare. Okay. How? But everybody you support politically doesn't support those things. It's just so incredibly, clearly dishonest. And there's another clip that's going to touch on that as well, but it's so absurd to me. Let me get to the next clip here. This is, again, about, I think this is about poverty and crime. Oh, no, this is actually different. No, this is, yes, sorry. I have so many clips here, I'm getting lost. This one is about how poverty leads to crime. And the other guest on here, whose name is, let's see here, Sean Fitzgerald. This is a debate mostly between him and
poverty. Clearly, this is a very simple concept. Leads to something like shoplifting. Why would someone shoplift based on a personal pathology? They're shoplifting because they're desperate.
Not necessarily. Like, so we have a lot of lax shoplifting laws in California, for example.
So
and what they find is we have a lot of organized retail theft because there's no consequences for it. For instance,
there are people trying to make money, and they're desperate. We have untold levels of income inequality in this country.
Well,
since
the late
70s, 900%. That's the increase in CEO pay versus 12% for the working class in this country. You don't think that leads to levels of desperation?
So wait, is income inequality the cause or is poverty the cause? Because those are two different things.
I mean, they go hand in hand.
They really don't.
Yes, they do. Because all the wealth is going towards the CEOs and to the billionaires in this country.
But it's not a zero-sum
economy.
economy.
So how does that? So just because some CEO in New York's getting rich means I have to rob this liquor store? Democrats always remove personal agency and accountability. They exist in a vacuum.
But also, if income inequality is the driver of crime, then how come we saw a giant crime decline after the mid-90s when income inequality was going up? In fact, we saw this happen all the way to 2019.
All right, I'm not even sure why this guy is debating this point, because he appears to later on acknowledge, after Emma brings it up, that lead in gasoline led to a massive crime spike. And then when that was taken out, it dropped. So that's what caused that drop in crime in the 90s, despite the increasing levels of income inequality. And by the way, if you want more information on that, if you haven't heard about that, there's a lot of resources on it. Just look up gasoline, lead, crime, and you'll find a lot. I'll link to this below in case you want to read more about it. From Vox here, they have a whole graph showing the connection between lead and crime and the drop and the increase, all that stuff. But how do you, why would somebody shoplift unless they need some shit? And look, I'm sure there are
people do it all the fucking time.
sure there are, I don't know, some teens who do it for fun, of course. But just generally, people in desperate situations need to survive. When they're in those situations, they do more desperate things. If you help those people to not be in desperate situations, guess what?
I wonder what the crime rates were when the Great Depression was happening in the 30s, up into the 40s, where people just were looting stores, robbing people. Of course not. Like, I don't know how people can make the connection between income inequality translates into being a criminal. Makes no sense.
There's less of a chance of them doing things like shoplifting. This is obvious. Why are we debating this? Even Tim Pool there, he's sitting back in this conversation because he knows Emma's right. So I'm not even sure that, like, what was the point of even having that debate? Let me get to the next clip here, and this is on gender affirming care.
Look, I've asked you, we have here, I literally just pulled up detransition Wikipedia. We pulled up the study that shows that without intervention, desistance rates are from 61 to 98%.
And here I have general acceptance of standards of care. The overwhelming weight of medical authority supports treatment of transgender patients with GnRH agonists and cross-sex hormones in appropriate circumstances. Organizations who have formally recognized this include American Academy of Pediatrics, American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, American Academy of Family Physicians, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, American College of Physicians, American Medical Association, American Pediatric Association, dozens and dozens
of smoking was good for you? You're not citing science. You're citing government approval.
No, I'm not. I am citing.
And that's fine.
What does the government have to do with it? These are medical organizations.
Okay, sure. Fair point. You're citing medical organizations, despite the fact that there have been numerous instances throughout history, in fact, basically all of them, where we've been like, hey, we were wrong about that. Like, maybe we shouldn't drink mercury if you get syphilis.
This debate is so frustrating because it is very clear where the science stands. It is very clear who supports the actual moral position, the position of just maybe allowing people to be who they are. Like, to even call this a culture, this is not a cultural issue. This is an issue of human rights. If you are trying to restrict people from being,
but he's like, who has a problem with letting just people be who they are? That's how it was originally sold to that's how the gay agenda was sold. Just let people be who they are. That's fine. But now that has came from let people be who they are to children need sex changes. Use my proper pronouns or else I'll send you to prison. If you call me the wrong pronoun, I'll threaten suicide. Boys are playing in female sports. Boys are in the same changing rooms as women. It's a slippery slope.
Who they want to be, you're clearly in the wrong. You are clearly on the wrong side of history. This isn't even a debate. The whole argument that Tim Pool tries to bring up at the end there about,
if you're advocating for giving children sexual reassignment surgery, gender blockers, and hormone treatment, not only are you on the wrong side of history, you are in a demented world of liberal logic. I'm sorry.
I think, mercury for syphilis, cure syphilis. That's where gender affirming care used to be, when it was treated as a mental illness and a problem. It's now evolved over decades to people, to experts and everyone understanding, most people understanding that, the gender affirming care is a positive thing. It's clearly positive mentally. It's better for the person. Like, again, I hate even having to.
It's good for the children it's good to lie to your children. That's okay to tell your kids. If any parents listening, if your child says, to affirm my identity, I need a Mike Tyson style tattoo on my face. How is that any different from a young boy telling his parents he wants to be a girl?
Try and explain this because to me it is so very obvious and clear. Just ask the people that need it. Now let me get to the next clip here, where Tim Pool pretends he's progressive.
I want to create a more equitable society for people. We should have socialized healthcare, Medicare for all. You should talk about that more in your program. You say you're in favor of it. I haven't really seen. I haven't seen much.
When you guys cherry pick stuff,
we should talk about ending child poverty. I mean, it's funny. You should talk about ending child poverty.
You talked about my position on universal healthcare any one of these times. You never do. Why? It's not to get traffic for you.
Well, I mean, you don't clip anything about universal healthcare. You should focus more on it, and then we would focus on it.
Because
what we try to do is in real time.
Universal healthcare.
What we try to do in real time is correct right-wing lies, whether it's you or Dave Rubin or Stephen Crowder. We do talk about abortion a lot.
Yeah. What's my abortion position?
Can you guess where Tim Pool goes with that? Oh, I support abortion rights. Yes, I'm big abortion rights supporter. That's why I support Donald Trump, who then went on to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices that took away abortion rights. Come on. This is going back to the other clip. You can't, and he goes on there like, why would I talk about universal healthcare? Maybe when you talk about politicians that would support it, that maybe you would support if you actually supported universal healthcare. God, it's so, Tim Pool really thinks his audience is stupid. And honestly, they have to be. If you think Tim Pool isn't a right-winger, you're stupid. Like, you know, right? If you're a Tim Pool viewer, you know where he stands. Like, you have to. He's not in the center. He's not on the left, not a liberal. He's a right-winger. That's what he is. He's a right-winger who tries to make people feel better about their positions by being like, oh, I personally support universal healthcare, but vote for Trump. Come on. All right, let me get to the next clip here. This is on, this is around their fight. All right, so again, this is, I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier. This is like a 10-minute.
I'm not a big Tim Pool fan. I used to watch him quite a bit. But this is like one of the best. This is why Emma and Sam never go out into opposing territory. Emma has done it. She made a couple of Piers Morgan interviews, and she looked like the childish 9-year-old girl who couldn't get a candy at the toy store, throwing a fit, interrupting, being rude, horrible, just overall stupid. That's why they can't make appearances, because every time they go out and have to contend with their ideas, they look like morons. Emma Vigeland is a moron. She is not a smart person. She's a Nepo baby. She went from like kindergarten to high school. She went through a $50,000 a year rich white kid school.
Fight, almost 7-minute fight. I don't know. Tim Pool does lots of yelling. It's impossible. Maybe I'll do a longer clip, or I'll put a bunch of clips together, because I'm not going to show you a 6-minute clip or 7-minute clip. But they this is where at this point I'm probably going to show you a bunch of clips. So here's a clip show of this crazy fight that they had.
It really does sound to me like someone told you to say things and you don't know what you're referencing.
I'm not shocked that that is the only way that you're going to try to react to this.
Come on. Let's hear it.
I believe that your program appeals to a right-wing audience.
Some guy posted one thing one time, and that's the only argument you have. Hey, how about you guys run a video about how Tim Pool got into an argument with a pro-lifer about how he's in favor of pro-choice policy? You didn't run that, did you? Because you guys are grifters. This is what you do. I can invite you on for a real conversation, and what do? Your show's turning on Nazis. This is why you guys don't get invited places, because you're not having real conversations.
I don't really care about getting invited places.
Yeah, right. So go live in your grifter echo chamber where you guys can play songs with bad audio and then say, whoopsie.
I'm sorry, that audio thing really upset you.
All right. Oh my God. So this part. Look, this is just...
Yeah, this clown loser didn't play the part before that where she says, why does your show attract right-wing Nazis? He forgot to leave that part out conveniently.
I guess the entertainment portion. There's nothing of substance here to really discuss. The whole argument began because Emma discussed how a shooter was a fan of Tim Pool, and so basically asking him, why do you think these people watch your show? And that really set Tim Pool off. And then he brings up, this is brought up several times, I think. At some point, I don't know, months ago, the Majority Report played a song from Tim Pool's band. He has a band. And they played it and they kind of laughed about it. Tim Pool, later on, he must have watched that clip, and he got really salty about it because he claimed that they purposely changed the audio to make it sound worse. Majority Report, they just play clips off the internet. They're not like going in there editing clips. There's nothing really of substance there. I have to show.
What's your alternative to producing the vaccine in the rapid way that Operation Warp Speed did?
Well, there are a lot of questions about whether or not it worked in any capacity, right?
No, there's not.
What do you mean?
The vaccines were highly effective.
What does that mean?
Originally at preventing death, then of course there were different variants and disease continued to spread. But vaccines were immensely effective in preventing death. The mRNA vaccines.
Right.
Not
So
the
what I mean more so
Johnson
is like the Operation Warp Speed was predicated upon preventing the spread, which it didn't do, right?
Sorry?
Operation Warp Speed was predicated upon
Yes, it did. It helped prevent the spread.
It didn't.
Yes, it did. Well, I mean, part of the issue was that in red states there was no ability to actually
death. But I think wasn't it like
there was no
mass
mandates were immediately done away with in red states. They basically had no social distancing. That was much more of had much more of an effect on death in this country than like the inefficacy of vaccines. This has been borne out by data after data after data set. And then we have new variations of the vaccines, which have also helped.
Yeah, nothing was going to reduce the spread that much. It was like it was already one of the most contagious viruses, and then it mutated to become more contagious.
Well, it helped with both transmissions and severity. That's a fact. mRNA vaccines did.
But I don't want to deviate too much. We're talking about...
I'm sure you don't. Emma does a fantastic job there, breaking down the vaccines and the importance of them. And Tim Pool, I guess maybe to his credit, he knows when to move on when he's lost an argument. So really good to see that. And this is... The disagreements here are the attempts to try and catch... There's other parts of that, of course. Again, this is a 2.5-hour discussion. There's other parts of that where he's trying to catch Emma or trip Emma up because, she's against Big Pharma, but Big Pharma administers the vaccines. Yeah, because that's how society currently operates. And during a pandemic, there's very little option in terms of how to administer a new vaccine. So, as Emma discusses, people on the left want to see, or would have liked to see, the vaccine controlled by the public, not controlled by Big Pharma.
What does that mean?
We don't want Big Pharma making massive...
How would the public control the vaccine?
Some profits.
How would that
off
work?
Of the vaccine. We don't want that profit motive in healthcare at all. So this idea that because you supported vaccines, you're somehow pro big pharma, pro corporation. It's just the nature of how things currently work. And when you're in a pandemic, there's very little option. Now let me get to the last clip here, and this is on Ukraine, where Tim Pool, I think it's in this clip, but it's around this clip at least. Tim Pool tries to claim that he is to the left of Emma when it comes to Ukraine and war in general.
Ukraine is on the defense. They were invaded. This is not the same thing.
About Kuwait and Iraq and...
You want to talk about that? I'm in favor. We were the equivalent of Russia in the case of Iraq. We invaded under completely false pretenses. We invaded under illegal pretenses, and we killed and decimated that country. Hundreds of thousands dead because of the
If the left position was only opposed to war because of the circumstances of the war, then I would say the left is more pro-war to the right of me on war.
I'm completely anti-war, but the war happened because Russia invaded, and now Ukraine is trying to defend itself.
Right, so you're anti-war, you oppose war.
Yes.
But you're to the right of me when it comes to Ukraine.
I don't think so.
Do you believe that the U.S. should be...
Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland out today, although we will be hearing from her, I believe, later in the program. Returning to the program, Chase Strangio, co-director of the ACLU LGBTQ HIV Rights Project and plaintiff's attorney in U.S. v. Skrmetti, where the ACLU, and correct me if I'm wrong, joined with the United States. It was filed under the Biden administration in suing the Attorney General, really the state of Tennessee, over their ban on health care for trans children, or really, more broadly speaking, anyone with any type of gender dysphoria or a whole host of other issues, it seems to me. But characterize the case for us, Jason. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And you're right that this was a case that the ACLU and Lambda Legal filed against Tennessee on behalf of 3 adolescents and their parents and a Tennessee doctor who provides this medical care to both transgender and non-transgender children. The United States under the Biden administration also joined the lawsuit, and we both argued that Tennessee's law violated the equal protection rights of transgender young people by allowing treatments if those treatments were consistent with an individual's sex, but banning them when they're inconsistent with an individual's sex. So we raised the argument that this was a law that discriminated based on sex and transgender status, as well as infringed the rights of parents to direct the medical care of their minor children. And we brought that case up through the courts at a time when adolescents in Tennessee were losing access to this medical care. Their parents, who had spent years trying to understand their children, how to best treat them, had their judgment displaced by the government of Tennessee.
So the parents were driving this whole thing. Kids are only transgender because it's either their parents or their teachers. 20 years ago, if a little boy thought he was a girl, he wasn't getting his dick chopped off. They weren't giving him hormone blockers.
Scrambling to find medical care. And so in March of 2023, we filed a lawsuit against Tennessee, and that is ultimately what became the case of United States versus Grimmetti at the United States Supreme Court.
Now, the fundamental question, well, there was a couple questions, and it feels to me like, from what I've read, that the Roberts Court, the 6-3 divide, which I think people have come to sort of anticipate, really skirted the fundamental questions here in some ways, right? I mean, the fundamental question is whether this is a case of sex discrimination as defined by court precedent. And so under what statutory framework does that become the question? And then let's delve into sort of the way the court sidestepped really an assessment of that was consistent with what prior court cases have been.
Yeah, so it was a question brought under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and that amendment says that the states shall not treat any person differently, and it's to be subject to differential treatment. And our argument was, look, this is a law that treats people differently based on their sex, and that the reality is that if you are someone who's assigned male at birth, you can get testosterone treatment in order to undergo a typical male puberty. If you're assigned female at birth, you cannot. Straightforward case of sex-based discrimination. That's 50 years of precedent of this court have held.
Is that sex-based discrimination or medical malpractice? What did he just say?
In order to undergo a typical male puberty, if you're assigned female at birth, you cannot. Straightforward case of sex-based discrimination. That's 50 years.
Would you treat a woman for testicular cancer? Is that sex-based discrimination? What the fuck are they talking about?
Years of precedent of this court have held that when governments discriminate based on sex, the government has to come forward with a sufficiently strong justification for that discrimination. And
that's what we know as heightened scrutiny.
Correct. That is what we know as heightened scrutiny. And the reason for heightened scrutiny is because there is, generally speaking, quite a bit of deference that courts show to the legislature. However, if the legislature gets into the business of treating people differently because of characteristics that have been the basis for discrimination in the past, we want the judiciary to come in with a more scrutinizing eye. And for 50 years, when there has been sex discrimination by state governments or by the federal government, the court has applied heightened scrutiny. And here, in essence, as Justice Sotomayor says in dissent, the majority had to distort both logic and precedent to reach the conclusion that this law, which on its face mentions sex 18 times, was not sex-based discrimination.
I mean, this law specifically says that its purpose is to encourage minors to appreciate their sex. It says it is to prevent people from becoming disdainful of their sex. And so, like you say, you could have all of the treatment that is that could be potentially prescribed as long as it is in furtherance of maintaining your gender with your sex. I guess it was United States v. Virginia that basically said all gender-based classifications warrant heightened scrutiny. So that was, but they sidestepped even the question of scrutiny, didn't they? Like they could have limited their ruling to the question as to whether this deserves heightened scrutiny or not, which is just a higher level of standard in which you need to have a state compelling reason by the state. And so theoretically, they could have said, this deserves a higher level of scrutiny, send it back down to the courts. If the lower courts find, as a finding, I guess, of fact, that there's a reason for the government to have a higher set of scrutiny, I mean, there's a more compelling reason by the government to do this, then that's the case. But they went further than they needed to, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, I think in one sense they did, and in one sense they didn't. I agree that all they needed to do was answer this question of whether it was heightened scrutiny or not, and that their precedents clearly, in our view, mandate the finding, the determination that this was a sex-based classification warranting heightened scrutiny, and then send it back down. The lower courts are in the business of making those determinations, weighing the evidence with the asserted justifications. Instead, the court answered the question. They just did it in a way that feels disingenuous and defies really any sort of logic. They said it's not a sex-based classification, and therefore heightened scrutiny doesn't apply. They did not say that for some other reason heightened scrutiny doesn't apply. They determined that this law, in their view, did not draw distinctions based on sex. And that, to me, is what's so nonsensical about the decision. I think it is more narrow than if they had said something along the lines of, it is sex discrimination, but only in this context do we not apply heightened scrutiny. They left intact United States versus Virginia. They left intact the 50 years of precedent saying all sex classifications warrant heightened scrutiny. They did so, however, by looking at this law and offering a nonsensical reading of it.
I see. And that would place like Amy Coney Barrett's dissent, or I should say concurring opinion, where she actually would have said that this was that this does not trigger heightened scrutiny.
Yeah, so there's three justices that would have gone even further. And Justice Barrett, in her concurrence, she agrees that it doesn't discriminate based on sex. And she sort of goes out of her way to say, even if it did discriminate based on transgender status, I don't think discrimination against transgender people as such warrants this type of scrutiny by the courts that we apply to discrimination based on race, based on sex, based on national origin, based on what was called legitimacy. And so she's going out of her way to signal that she's prepared to green light all sorts of discrimination against transgender people. The majority's opinion makes clear that it is only addressing this very narrow context.
All right, let's talk about the implications of this, specifically for young people in Tennessee and perhaps in other states across the country, maybe specifically, maybe not even perhaps, across the country. And then for transgender folk who are over the age of 18, because it seems like this also opens up the door for bans against any type of healthcare for transgender people.
Yeah, I mean, so I think what's so hard about this, what's been so hard about the last 2 years, is that people like our clients in this case, the Williams family, have had to uproot their lives. They've now traveled to 4 different states to access healthcare for their teenage child. And the reason for that is because their government has come in and said that you cannot make this one and only one decision for your child with respect to medical care, because we think we know better. And they did not regulate the medical care. They did not start by studying the medical care. They just, from one day to another, completely banned it. And that's the same thing that has happened in half the states in this country. And I think for parents, and I'm a parent, and I just want people to think about what it would feel like if your child was suffering and you didn't know what to do for many years, which is the case with all of these families. They're calling experts, they're doing research on the internet, they're trying to figure out what to do. And
the amount of devastation you cause these kids later in life it cannot be fixed.
The very same states that are banning this care are the states that during the pandemic said parents have a right to send their kids to school without a mask. Parents have a right to ensure that their children are not taught about racism in schools. Parents have a right to stop their kids from getting vaccinations. Now, we have the same state saying, but you know what parents don't have a right to? To provide gender-affirming medical care to their minor children. And it's devastating for these families, and they're scared, and their kids are scared, and their kids are internalizing all of this rhetoric that's coming from all levels of government, including the federal government, quite aggressively right now.
What are the implications of this ruling for trans care writ large? I mean, obviously, there are going to be states that are going to protect care for trans folk. in those states that have passed, and I think we're 23, some form of restriction on gender affirming care for minors. Legally, do the states have room now to do this for people who are over the age of 18?
Well, we're starting to see states do that even before this decision from the Supreme Court, and that's one of the reasons why we've been fighting so hard. You know, some of the states that ban this care, Oklahoma, Florida, South Carolina, started to ban public funding for this care for adults. So Medicare, Medicaid, state Medicaid, state employee benefits, all of a sudden losing that for adults. I think we can anticipate the escalation of care for escalation of bans and to reach care for adults. I don't think this decision necessarily greenlights that as a constitutional matter, but I do think it emboldens the actors who want to cut off healthcare for transgender people to do so. The court was clear that at least as to their holding that the law did not discriminate based on transgender status, that was based on the fact that it was limited to minors. Now, I can't say for sure that the next case that comes up before them that deals with adults, that they're going to rule differently, but there was at least some limiting language in there about the fact that it concerned care for minors. I also think that were the federal government to take this action, depending on how they would try to do so, there would be other arguments available, especially if we see President Trump seeking to do something via executive order that would violate the separation of powers in some way, whether the president might try to overstep into the role of Congress. There would be other legal avenues available to challenge that. So certainly this is not a decision that answers questions under distinct legal theories that might be implicated if the federal government were to act. And we know right now, Congress, in the budget bill, both the Senate and the House version have a ban that would be national in scope on Medicaid coverage for gender-affirming medical care for people of all ages. An overwhelming majority of trans people rely on Medicaid because of discrimination in employment, in housing, in education, in healthcare. And so when you have a community that is disproportionately living in poverty because of discrimination, disproportionately therefore relying on Medicaid, to have Congress come in and suggest that they're going to ban a form of medical care under the Medicaid program, that's going to have a serious impact on trans people. So we're obviously watching that as well.
Is that provision, I want to get back to just the federal ban in a second, but is that provision in Medicaid, which is in the reconciliation bill, do you know if that has been subject to the Byrd rule scrutiny? In other words, on its face, it sounds to me like something that would run afoul of the Byrd rule, which says that not only does everything in a reconciliation bill have to impact the federal government's budget, but it has to be for the purpose of impacting the federal budget. And it sounds to me like it's very difficult to pick out one subset of medical care that Medicaid provides and say, we're doing this for budgetary reasons. It's absurd.
Yeah, especially when it's, thinking about hormones, they're disproportionately provided to non-transgender people for other purposes. It's being reviewed by the parliamentarian today. So that question, we will get the answer to imminently, today or tomorrow, but likely today.
And so the prospects of there being a federal ban are probably low, at least in terms of legislation, because of the need in the Senate to have 60 votes to move that question forward. From an executive order, less so, but your sense is that there's a lot more legal grounds in which to contest that if it is a specific executive order, whether that in regards to Medicaid or some broader ban.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are legal mechanisms to challenge executive agency action, especially executive orders, if they seek to ban medical care or even restrict medical care, depending on how they seek to go about doing that in the aftermath of Scrimeti. And we currently have a lawsuit challenging one piece of one of President Trump's executive orders that sought to coerce hospitals and other medical providers to stop providing gender-affirming medical care to transgender people under the age of 19. And that case is ongoing and includes the argument that the president is exceeding his constitutional authority by threatening federal funding to state institutions.
What's with the obsession of Democrats in trying to trans kids? They're just like glorifying grooming. They're groomers.
In that manner. So that litigation will continue. Litigation against adult bans will continue. There are theories available. But of course, it is troubling when the Supreme Court acts in such a way that so obviously distorts the language of a statute, the the purpose and precedent related to the Reconstruction Amendments. And this is a court where we're about, to continue litigation over another quintessential piece of the 14th Amendment, which is the birthright citizenship provision. And so if this court is so willing to move away from these critical constitutional protections, as they did in Dobbs, as they did here in Scrimeti, as they are continuing to do, I think we have to ask ourselves, what else is coming? And are we going to see these attacks as interconnected, or are we going to continue to let these powers divide us?
That's a great point. And I'm fairly confident these are going to keep coming. And that assault on those post-Reconstruction amendments are going to, I think, just continue to build on themselves. Trey Strange, co-director of the ACLU LGBTQ and HIV Rights Project, one of the plaintiff's attorneys in the Scrimeti case. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Good to see you. Thanks so much.
The Texas Senate in the middle of the night. This is House Bill 299. The bill already passed the House. It's going to go to the governor's desk in Texas, and I'm reading here from the Texas Tribune. It says a woman is an individual whose biological reproductive system is developed to produce ova, while a man is someone whose reproductive system is developed to fertilize the ova. The bill would require that this definition be used across state statute, with potentially wide-ranging consequences for trans and intersex people who would see their gender identity reverted back to the sex they were assigned at birth in state records. The bill, called the Women's Bill of Rights, was authored by Representative Ellen Troxclair and carried by Senator Maines Middleton. Supporters of the bill say it's about preserving single-sex spaces like bathrooms, locker rooms, and prisons, and opportunities like athletic competitions, which, we know that there's just like a handful of trans athletes that they're targeting and using as a fig leaf for overall like religious orthodoxy and trying to place boundaries on gender and sex and things of that nature. There's something, just as an aside, estimates prior to any broad conversation about trans affirming care in this country that show that intersex people are around like 1% to 2% of the population, and they may contain both traits, just to show how impossible it is to make this determination. But they're choosing to enforce it because of religious fundamentalism, essentially. But this was a great speech clipped here by Human Rights Watch, I believe, showing this man named Nick Mulberg.
Human Rights Campaign.
Oh, sorry, Human Rights Campaign. Human Rights Campaign clip this. This guy's Nick Mulberg talking about this bill and what's so wrong with it.
I'll call you a coward because you're not actually interested in protecting women in Texas. That's the guise of the bill, right? It's the Trojan horse that you use for all this anti-trans nonsense. I remember for years as Republicans, gay marriage is going to end the world. And of course, then the public opinion shifted, the Overton window moved, and you had to pick a new scapegoat. That's what you always have to do. It's not that you can actually sit here and do the business of the people, make lives better for Texans like me. No. There's no time for that. We got to bully 1% of the population. We gotta harm them as badly as we possibly can. We gotta make them afraid. We gotta make them stay in their homes so that you're not forced to actually acknowledge.
Transgender does more harm to themselves than the government does, or Republicans.
That they exist. If we were sitting here like 50 years ago, maybe 60 years ago, instead of talking about trans women going into bathrooms, we'd be talking about black women going into white bathrooms. Do y'all ever get tired of being on the wrong side of history?
Yeah, that's well said.
100% true. No, it's 100% true. And I think I would only add or, maybe amend what he was saying with the fact that, not only do they do these bills instead of passing bills to, help average Texans and alleviate any of their many issues, right? I can only imagine. I've never been to Texas, but I hear bad things. They do this to distract from the fact that they're doing the exact opposite. These cultural topics are purposely floated out by Republicans to distract from the fact that they are using all of their other time to serve the 1%, to actively make the lives of the working class worse.
Right.
This is just a distraction.
It's a distraction, and I agree with you. Sometimes people say it's a distraction to tell Democrats to avoid talking about it, which is not what you're saying, obviously. But I just want to make that kind of clear, this delineation between people that say that culture issues, which is a really, I think, it's often a term that is meant to, obscure marginalized people and minority rights by definition, right? Because if it's a cultural issue, if you're trying to protect minority rights, you're almost certainly not going to have the majority of the public on your side. If we just abandon cultural issues during the civil rights movement, I got to tell you, poll numbers on integration and getting rid of Jim Crow, not necessarily exactly where you would want them to be. And that's why it's important to have standards and values and things that you fight for so you can have the minority groups in your coalition that you're advocating for.
When the culture issue is, should white supremacy be allowed to march? The answer is like no.
Right.
Well, I mean, also these cultural issues are being used as wedges to, to segregate the working class. They're being used as a tool by our capitalist overlords to put one group of workers against another group of workers who they have infinitely more in common with by nature of them sharing the same like socioeconomic strata, right? In our socioeconomic hierarchy, which is oftentimes like, and more often than not, a caste system. And this is just an active tool that they're using. And that's why we have to call it out. We don't have to sidestep it, because if we sidestep it, then it seems like there's some legitimacy there. But it's actively being used to make it seem as though like you have more to hate about your neighbor, undocumented or not, than you do to have about Elon Musk, who's like actively taking money out of your pocket and putting it into his pocket, which is just, insane.
Yeah. If you believe, here's a simple litmus test for you. If you believe healthcare is a human right, then you believe trans care is a human right too, because trans care is healthcare. They need it. Trans people need gender affirming care. They need.
No, they don't.
Need to be able to go to their doctor. They need to be able to get the medications that they need, because gender dysphoria is a thing that is diagnosable and has been, and there is a treatment plan for it. And all of these.
Yeah, you don't let them chop off their private parts.
Republican legislatures and all these conspiracy theorists that Trump has staffed Health and Human Services with are flying in the face of established medical procedures that have been borne out with decades of research and trial and error and all the stuff about protecting kids. You need parental consent in all of this. You do. And then when people are adults, hey, what happened to liberty? Now they're going to be basically like policing people's genitalia as they come into bathrooms or locker rooms. What do trans women and men who have been living as that gender and for many years or whatever, even if you're newly transitioned, how do you go when you present?
Not our fucking problem. How's that? Why is that all of a sudden our problem?
As a woman or a man, if you're trans, into another person's bathroom and say somebody is looking out for you. Like, just think about the anxiety and fear that this creates with trans people in Texas. You're going to see instances like we've already seen across the country where people aren't even trans, but they're being targeted violently when they go into bathrooms. It's going to be the same thing for trans people too, and that's what they want.
Remember the Joe Rogan fake video that he fell for? That was clearly a skit, just demonstrating exactly that. They're so ready for it, and it's instructive that in 2017, America's like, North Carolina, what the fuck are you doing? Caring about this, and that like basically we've allowed them to change that's why the schools, the intramural sports or whatever, the high school athletics, that's why that became the issue, is because the bathroom one wasn't even salient enough for this hysterical, and it is just like, it's the type of hysteria that like led to lynchings. It's like the people that are go ahead, Brandon.
No, I think it's really important that he draws the parallel between like the experience of black people in America and the experience of trans people, not just trans women, because we do tend to, as a society, erase the existence of trans men. And I think that's, on purpose, or if not on purpose, strategic on the Republican side, because they're misogynist, and that's what they're really interested in policing, which is women's spaces and women's bodies as men. But I would even go further and say they would not necessarily, I mean, they would be the kind of people who are arguing against like black inclusion into white spaces in the 60s, but even more poignantly, and I think this is important to highlight because gender is a social construct, race is a social construct. These are the kinds of people who in the 1800s would be, rallying against the idea of including black people into the definition of human, because people pretend like these are.
If gender is a social construct, then why are you taking medical interventions to change it? If it's just socially constructed.
Mutable categories that have always existed in a state that they exist in now as part of nature. But we forget that 200 years ago, we didn't consider black people to be human. There are probably Republicans who are watching this right now joking to themselves, ha, 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 I still don't. But that is just proving my point, that these are that these social constructs are culturally mediated, they're socially mediated, they are determined by individuals in the moment. And that's what they're so afraid of, that one day we will get to the point where gender is all inclusive of trans people in a way that it isn't right now. And it'll seem just as natural and normal as it doesn't seem now. Like, because that's what it is for like race. And, they still have issues with that. Some of them have issues with that, but that's just the nature of changing definitions and changing social categories. And, for some people, it already is that way. And, we're in a constant battle to expand that acceptance. And I think that, they're afraid of that.
Yeah, someone I know is like a gay man who just got married, like, eloped basically. And I was looking at his pictures and thinking about how I didn't even give it a second thought. I guess that is like I'm backtracking there. I was just thinking about like me growing up, and in 2008 or whatever, I remember being really inspired by the push to get like the Obama campaign, and eventually Biden had to be the one to do it, going on Ellen DeGeneres finally saying, okay, gay people can get married. But how this was a real fight. Like, this was a very real fight for this kind of like stuff that's, at least in my, more normalized now. We're in a very reactionary backlash period.
Won by activists, though, interrupting things like Obama's coronation.
Exactly. Without these activists that these same people say are detracting, like the centrists,